Hi, I'm Peter from Coffee Parts, and today we're comparing two very similar yet different hand grinders, the Etzinger ETZ-i and the 1ZPresso J-Max. Let's get into it and see how these compare. The Etzinger ETZ-i and the 1ZPresso J-Max. When I look at these grinders, I see so many similarities, and then when I dive into them, I see so many differences. But you can really tell that both grinders came and were designed from a principle of engineering, from two founders or groups of founders who loved coffee and really wanted to solve a problem. When you look at Etzinger, it was founded by Christian Etzinger, and they only build grinders, and they built a lot of grinder technology that other machine manufacturers have used. Think of the Brazza Seti, La Marzocco Swift Mini, even the hand grinders by 1ZPresso. And when you look at 1ZPresso, there are a bunch of coffee lovers with engineering backgrounds out of Taiwan that really wanted to do a company just focused on hand grinders and really solve what they saw were the problems of current grinders. Now when you start looking at both of these, they both have conical blades. They're both hand grinders. They both have the adjustment on the outside of the grinder. They both have a lot of adjustments, so really small movements of the vertical blade movement, so to speak. And they both have magnetized coffee catchers. But then when you start diving in, you see the differences. So with the Etzinger ETZ-i, you got a 32mm conical blade, which is a lot smaller than the 48mm titanium coated conical blade that comes in the 1ZPresso. But with the conical blade on the 1ZPresso, it's actually the center blade that's turning, and that's a very traditional approach. So you've got your shaft here that connects directly to your center blade, and as you turn the handle, it's the center blade that's moving and the external blade that's fixed. With Etzinger, they've reversed that, and they're really known for what they call the rotating ring burr technology. And what that means is it's actually the external blade or the external burr that rotates. So when you look inside an Etzinger, it's empty, it's clear, which means it's super easy to clean and super easy to load your coffee in. And when you do pull it apart super easily, you'll see that it's actually the external blade, as you can see here, and not the internal blade that moves. And what that means is, not only have you got a clean shaft, but you now have the ability to pull it apart and putting it back together without any tools super easily. And we're talking about dialing in. With the Etzinger, you've got 23 numbers, so 0 to 23 with 88 notches. So you do have very minute movements. That minute movement, each movement on vertical blade movement is 0.02 of a millimeter. But with the 1ZPresso, they've taken that vertical blade movement one step further, and each movement on the 1ZPresso is 0.0088, so under half the movement you get here. What that means is you need a lot more movements to go, as I say, from espresso to filter, if you wanted to do filter. So what they have is, they've got 9 numbers, 0 to 9, and each rotation or revolution has 90 notches, and you can do up to 5 rotations. So if you were going from, call it espresso to cold brew, that is quite a lot of rotations. And the way to keep track of it, they've done a hidden little pyramid here. So you see the number of squares in the pyramid will equal to the number of rotations you've gone through. So a clever way to be able to keep track and move it really easily. But this grinder is super espresso focused, and it really is done so you can dial in to the nth degree and really work out on those brew ratios. Now, talking handles, they've taken once again a different approach. Because the 1ZPresso has a larger blade, you need a little bit more pressure to grind, and they've compensated for that for having a larger handle so you get more leverage. Not only is it larger with more leverage, it's got a really nice ergonomic design so you never feel like your knuckles or your hands are going to hit anything on the grinder. With the Etzinger, you got the flat arm, and it's actually a counterclockwise grind. So the first time you use it, it's a bit weird because you expect to go this way, but it's counterclockwise. Once you've done it once, it's fine. But it doesn't have as ergonomic a feel, but what it does have is you can lift it in and drop it down, so a lot more practical to travel with. And that can be convenient if you just wanted to, say, throw it in a backpack. When it comes to dosing cups, both of these have had a connection with a magnet. So you just pull this apart, give it a slight little twist, pull it apart, and you see all the magnets here, and it just connects back up. With the Etzinger, they've also used a magnet, but in this case, they've used a solid magnet here in the center, which really does hold it firm. And when you turn the cup the other way around, that design has been done. Not only does it look beautiful, but it connects into the bottom of the grinder here, when you find your position, to be able to dial it into the nth degree with a little bit of assistance. On saying that, on the 1ZPresso, they've just got a bit of rubber. Although the design is not as cool, it really does feel nice when you're putting it down on the bench. So once again, different approaches, but just both beautiful. The rubber versus a beautiful design that has a function. So because we are talking about predominantly espresso on these hand grinders, I've pre-dosed 20 grams of coffee. I'm gonna load them into each grinder and grind it out so we can see the workflow and what it looks like. We've got 20 grams of coffee in each cup here, and we've got 2 portafilters. So with the 1ZPresso, we can load the coffee in, but like most grinders, you've got your center shaft, and although it falls in neatly, there's always that bit where it's just not as open. And we load the handle back in. With the Etzinger, it's cool that the top is held on by magnets. We just lift that up, and because there's no shaft, we just pour it in freely and put it back. So just grinding out 20 grams on the J-Max. And now once you've got the grind, just pulling that cup out and transferring into a portafilter is quite easy. Now this is a 58ml portafilter. You can transfer just carefully, but quite easily. And now once you've got your coffee out, you can just bring in that tamper and just give it a tamp. And that's the J-Max. Just locking that back in. Now when it comes to the ETZ-i, it's actually counterclockwise, so it does feel a little bit different. Now one cool thing on the ETZ-i is because the blades are a little bit smaller, it is a little bit less resistance, and I do find it a little bit easier to grind. The other thing is when you are transferring it to a 58ml portafilter, the dosing cup here feels the right size, so it is a little bit easier to transfer, hit it out, lift it out, and obviously now give it a tamp. Although when it came to coffee, both grinders feel almost as consistent as one another. And just locking that back in, and you've got your 2 espressos. I felt like the ETZ-i was a little bit less work than the J-Max, but there's a nice feel to the J-Max as an overall product. So it's really 2 different grinders. They've taken 2 different approaches with very similar results. One thing to note though is, on the ETZ-i, the finer you grind, the little bit more retention you get in there, but it's super easy to clean. In saying that, on this grinder, you do get a smaller bit of retention in there. You can just clean up with a brush, but either way, both grinders easy to pull apart and give a clean. So now my closing thoughts. It's hard to pick because they're both similar yet different. What would you pick? Would you pick the Etzinger or the 1ZPresso? Would you pick something different like the Commandant or the Time or Chestnut X? Let me know in the comments below. And like always, if this video has brought you value, hit that thumbs up. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe. See you on the next video. Thank you again.